Hare Krishna, welcome back to our continuing series of discussions on the Bhagavad Puran. So today we are continuing with our discussion we started last week of the second canto. So if you remember that final question that Parikshit Maharaj had asked about what is it that a person who's about to die, what is the duty of a person who's about to die? And in that context, Sukdev Goswami gave a very deep, profound answer that Ante Narayana Smriti, that at the end moment, the conclusion of philosophical speculation of Sankhya or the meditative absorption of yoga, or even performing one's prescribed duties of one's swadharma, ultimately it all culminates in Ante Narayana Smriti, meditating on the Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality Narayana, one who's the protector of all the living entities. So having given that, so the natural question that comes is that how do I then remember the Lord? How do I then meditate upon? How do I attain that particular state? So the following discussion between Sukdev Goswami and Parikshit is mainly an answer to this question as to how should one remember the Lord? And if you see, Sukdev Goswami, he presents a very philosophical answer. In fact, this and the next chapter are going to be slightly philosophical, because Sukdev Goswami, as a Vedic scholar, as a Vedic practitioner who has practiced many different paths, and also understanding that in the audience that which is around him, there are people of different schools of thought. So how to give an answer that reconciles the different Vedic paths and at the same time without compromising on the highest truth. So that is the brilliance that Sukdev Goswami is going to show now. So we'll go back and forth between this chapter and little bit of the next chapter to give a systematic understanding, right? So the objective we have here right now is meditation on or attaining a higher state through meditation, right? That is basically we are trying to tune your consciousness to a higher state. Now, when it comes to meditation in general, usually we think of, okay, there are different methodologies of meditation. There is breath-centric meditation. Sometimes people chant with mantras. Sometimes people chant just on their inner thoughts, right? Sometimes on certain chakras in your body. These are different modalities of meditation. But however, if you broadly see, meditation in itself can be divided into three categories. The first style of meditation is a non-theistic meditation. I'm not calling it atheistic, but I'm calling it a non-theistic meditation, wherein there is no connection to anything higher or anything divine, and which you will see if you look at the world around you and the different styles of meditation being taught and practiced. You can broadly see which examples we are talking about. You can categorize them in your head, right? For example, the very popular style of the school of philosophy, which is not Vedic, but it came along the same time as many of the Vedic schools, which is Buddhism. Buddhism does not have any theistic concept, right? However, there is a form of meditation, and the goal of that meditation, it does not have a theistic goal. There is no one supreme Lord or absolute truth. So you may say, then what about a non-theistic style of meditation? Well, if you see, Sukdev Goswami right at the outset, he dismissed that, saying that Ante Narayana Smriti, you have to remember the Supreme Lord. So there is no scope for any non-theistic forms of meditation. But you may ask, but so many practitioners of Buddhism, they did attain transcendence. How can you just dismiss? How did Sukdev Goswami straight away dismiss a whole school of thought? So to understand that, what exactly is the destination of such kind of a non-theistic form of meditation? So if you see, Right now, I identify with the world of matter. Right? If you ask me who am I will give something about what I do, something connected to my this birth, this body, my ideologies present to my mind, right? So all my identities are centered around certain layers of matter that are surrounding me, the soul. So in non-theistic forms of meditation, we are trying to uh, deny all these material layers. I am not this body. I am not this prana. I am not my thoughts. The thoughts are just some waves that are passing by. I should not be identifying with these thoughts. I am not even these ideologies. I am not even that logic and rationality, because I am just an observer of that logic and rationality, but I am different from them. I am even different from all these identities. So basically, you are trying to dismiss all the false identities, but you are not fully bringing about the notion of the self, because you cannot talk about spirit without bringing in the supreme spirit, the original source. So in all these non-theistic forms of meditation, you are just saying what you are not. Like suppose, for example, if I ask you, what are you doing? You'll say, I'm not playing football. Okay, that's fine. I see that. But what are you doing? I'm not eating food. Okay, what are you doing? Right? So definitely the answer is right, but it's not a conclusive answer. So therefore, Sukadeva Goswami, he straight away dismisses these non-theistic uh, forms of meditation, because he says that without that higher connection, the soul cannot have its own independent identity. Right? So which means you can deny what you are not, that's fine, right? But what you are, that the clarity has to come. Therefore, he does not see that as a complete path. It's only an incomplete journey. So to understand a little more technically, then what about the destination of such kind of a meditator, right? Because they have completely overcome those material identities. So they are no more bound to material energy. But because they do not have understanding of something spiritual as soul, or even something higher as a supreme soul, or the supreme lord, therefore they are in this quasi region somewhere in between, which is neither spiritual nor material. In the Vedic parlance, that is an energy field called as viraja. Sometimes in popular literature, it is literally described as this river separating the material and spiritual worlds, right? So river as an energy, because just like how energy is flowing, right? So you can, when you experience that state, it almost feels like something moving like a wave, and therefore the closest thing we can comprehend of a wave is a river, right? So it is a kind of an energy zone which is neither spiritual nor material. It's in between. That is a viraja. So therefore, because it's an incomplete journey, Sukadeva Goswami doesn't even bother to talk about that. So he dismissed that right away in the beginning. Then that brings us about to a theistic forms of meditation. Within the theistic forms of meditation, again, there are two categories. The first is theistic but not devotional. Then there is theistic and devotional. So in this chapter and the next chapter, Sukadeva Goswami, because the fundamentals are the same, because both are theistic forms of meditation, because the fundamentals are the same, he is going to cover both of them in one flow. But when differences arise, he is going to interject. But when you read this chapter in one flow, which is the theistic and non-devotional, which is the theistic and devotional, it may seem like an overlap, right? So with this background, let us now approach this chapter, right? Where first, Sukadeva Goswami, he begins by talking about certain basics which are common to both the theistic and non-devotional, and the theistic and the devotional aspect. So the first stage, as you remember, if last week I mentioned how we are going to revisit our friend Patanjali. So the first stage is he talks about the yamas and the niyamas. So likewise, the same he's going to talk about here, that how at the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death. One must cut off all attachments to the material body and everything pertaining to it and all the desires thereof. Right? So this is the preparation. So literally from yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, and pratyahar, he is going to cover now in the following verses. One should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place, he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place, duly sanctified. So if you carefully noticed, maybe if I read the Sanskritam, you will pick up some of the yamas and niyamas. Grihat pravrajito dhiraha punyatirtha jalaplutaha shauchau vivikta asino vividhat kalpasitane. So kalpita asane. So asana, shaucha. Shaucha was one of the niyamas, right? And even here, Antakale tu purusha agate gatas chindyat asanga shastrena, that with the weapon of detachment, right? That's the yamas. So he practices the yamas and niyamas. So basically maintaining that purity, shaucha, of the body and of course of the mind. He goes to a sacred place and begins his meditation. And then what does he do? Abhyasena manasa shuddham tivrat brahmaksharam param. So what is the brahmakshara? The three sacred syllables a, u, and m, the omkara, right? So after sitting in this above manner, making the mind remember the three transcendental letters a, u, and m, and by mano yate jita shwasa, by controlling one's shwasa or breath, that is pranayama, right? He brahma bhijam avismaran. So then he meditates on this omkara. So now the methods of this pranayama also he has covered, right? And then gradually, as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities. What is that? Pratyahara. Withdrawing your senses inwards. And by intelligence, the senses will be controlled. So he goes to the pratyahara stage also. The mind, to absorb in material activities, can be engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness. Now, he talks about a devotional meditation in the next verse. Thereafter, one should meditate upon the limbs of Lord Vishnu, one after another, without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. So this is the method stage. After pratyahara comes dharana and dhyana. So how is this dharana done? One is meditating on the individual limbs of the Lord without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. So it's not that, when we're meditating on the lotus feet, you disconnect the lotus feet from the rest of the body and meditate only on that. But rather, keeping the entirety of the form in place, you are still focusing on the lotus feet, on the knees, on the waist, on the navel, on the chest, on the face, on the lotus eyes. So that's how the yogi gradually starts to meditate on the Supreme Lord. There should be no other thing in thought at this point. That's the state of dhyan, right? And then because the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is the ultimate truth, the mind becomes completely reconciled in him only. Then what happens? One's mind is always agitated by the passionate mode of material nature and bewildered by the ignorant mode of... So this vimudha and akshipta. So kshipta means, the nature of the mind, it always keeps wandering. So if you notice during your meditation, two things are bound to happen. Either your mind is wandering all over the place or you fall asleep, right? So this is the kshipta and vimudha, which is basically rajas and tamas. So when the mind is meditating upon Lord Vishnu, when it is meditating upon the limbs of the Lord, it rises past the influence of rajas and tamas. And then what happens? But one can rectify such conceptions by relation of Vishnu and thus become pacified by cleansing the dirty things created by them. So the influence of the rajasic and tamasic samskaras that are there within us, they can be overcome by meditating upon the limbs of the Lord, by meditating upon the form of the Lord. O King, by the system of remembrance and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all good personal conception of the Lord, one can very soon attain devotional service to the Lord under his direct shelter. So at this point, what happens to a yogi? Because he is meditating upon the Lord, and somewhere in their life they have done some devotional service through some connection, devotional connection was there. That is why they were able to meditate upon the Lord, upon the personal conception of the Lord. And so one feels that devotional, I want to serve this personality whom I'm witnessing within my heart. And that is how they develop a devotional connection, right? And this method, if you see, while the devotion is there, the primary modality is through meditation, right? So therefore, this is technically what is called as Yoga Mishra Bhakti, or devotional service that is mixed with meditation or yoga. Yoga Mishra Bhakti or Dhyana Mishra Bhakti, right? So this is the the path that kind of a yogi takes. So then Parikshit asks a question. Sukhdeva, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied, and how this conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed. Or in other words, how this internal cleansing has to be done. So if you see, the external cleansing we do through Bahiranga Yoga, through yamas, niyamas, right? Through asana, we cleanse the body. Through pranayama, we cleanse our pranic body. Through pratyahar, we cleanse our energies so that the senses don't get titillated and wander around. So through these 5 external limbs, we cleanse the external states. Through dhyan and dharana, we are specifically cleansing our inner states. So Parikshit wanted a little more clarity about this inner cleansing. And so Sukhdeva Goswami, taking this cue, he now gives a more generic presentation, because he wanted Parikshit to meditate on the Lord in that kind of a devotional mood. But when a question is asked and when you are surrounded by audience, right, and that when a question is asked, when there are different scholars in the audience, though you are addressing the person who asked the question, you are simultaneously also conscious, oh, this fellow, I know his philosophy, I should also address him through this question, and also kind of bring that philosopher also to the path which I am trying to talk about. So while it seems like a conversation between Parikshit and Shuka, but Shuka is trying to also address the other Vedic scholars. And mind you, in that August assembly, not everybody adhered to the devotional theistic meditation. There were many theistic meditators, but who didn't have that kind of who never had a devotional connection. So now Shuka is going to give a scholarly presentation about both these paths, starting with the theistic yet non-devotional meditation. Now, we need to clarify this understanding. What do you mean by devotional? Is it that, he's always, he's crying for the Lord all the time and, chanting the names of the Lord all the time? What do you mean by this devotional? So, of course, this comes a little later on the second chapter, but we will borrow that verse at this point of our discussion. Basically, what does devotion do to you? The conditioned soul is devoted to its ego. Or in other words, it looks at the whole world through the lens of its ego. What does it mean to see the world through the lens of its ego? To see as what is in this for me. Because I am the sole enjoyer. I am the sole master. So what is in it for me is the vision of a conditioned soul. Now, when you begin your spiritual journey, somewhere you are kind of peeling off those material layers, and somewhere you are saying, okay, this is not for me, this is not for me, and you'll develop some kind of a detachment. But that real detachment comes when you start developing spiritual attachment. Real material detachment comes through spiritual attachment. Or in other words, when you understand that Krishna is the real master, Krishna is the real enjoyer, then naturally you will not try to confiscate Krishna's property, knowing that when like when you go to somebody's house, right? Though the house is so nice and so attractive, when you know that whose house this is, you will not just go and start breaking things or start using things, or you don't go to their refrigerator and open and start eating all the chocolates that are there in the refrigerator. You'll not just go to their bedroom and just lie down, right? You may do that in your house, but not in your guest house, because somewhere in the back of your head, that sambandha is there in your head. Sambandha means the relationship. The understanding of the relationship is there, that all these objects I'm seeing around me, they belong to someone. So when that understanding comes, then naturally detachment comes. But when the understanding is not there, at best you will work at the level of tolerance. Oh, I should not eat I should not eat these chocolates. They don't belong to me. I don't care whom they belong to, but I should not eat it. Oh, I should not just go and sleep on this bed. Why? I don't know whose bed this is, but I should not do it because it's not my bed. So somewhere you are working still at that level of this is not mine, this is not mine. So the devotional understanding, what it does is it brings in still a natural detachment. But when a yogi does not have that, he is theistic, he understands that there is some divine, but because he has not developed that relationship, a devotional relationship with the divine, the detachment does not come naturally. He may still have some traces of attachment. So what about such an attached yogi? What should because he was never exposed to the devotional path. He never understood that science. He was never exposed to the science of devotion, the sambandha, the relationship with the Supreme. So what about such a yogi who understand there is somebody higher than me, but never understood that relationship, and therefore still has some attachment to the things of this world? How can such a person cleanse their attachment? By learning to see the Supreme in everything. Not just seeing the Supreme in everything, but learning to see everything as part of the body of Supreme. And that is the first step in meditation. And that is the vision of the cosmic form or the universal form known as the Virata Rupa. Virata means gigantic. Rupa means form. So we're talking about this gigantic form or the cosmic form. So those of us, when we studied our Bhagavad Gita together, Krishna also shows one universal form in the Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter. But that universal form is more of a form representing the time factor. That is just one aspect of the universal form. But this universal form which Shukadeva Goswami is going to talk about is the original Virata Rupa, which encompasses the entire universe. So this is how a yogi now learns to meditate, right? So such a person who's attached to this world, but still hasn't developed that loving detachment, what does a yogi do? He sits down in nature and sees, oh, these mountains, these gigantic mountains, they are like the bones of the Supreme Lord. Oh, the clouds that I see up in the sky, they are like the hair of the Supreme Lord, the hair on his head. Oh, the grasses that I see all around me, they are like the hair on the body of the Lord. Oh, these gigantic rivers and oceans that I see, they are like the veins of the Lord, the nadis of the Lord. Nadi and Nadi. Nadi is the Sanskritam for river. Nadi are the energy channels in our body. So whenever the yogi sees any flow, they see, oh, this is like the flowing. So for such a person who has not developed that kind of a personal, devotional, loving relationship with the Supreme, they can still make advancement by learning to develop this meditation on the cosmic form. Remember, to develop this kind of a loving, devotional understanding is not artificial. Somewhere you need some higher mercy to get this understanding. Somewhere the seed of Shraddha, the seed of seed of conviction has to be bestowed upon you. Only such a rare, fortunate soul can develop a personal devotional connection. But for those who have not somehow, who are not so fortunate to have received that seed of conviction, don't worry, even they have hope. They can artificially try to connect things to the Lord by, so if you see, there is the there is the devotional understanding of the Lord, devotional form of the Lord, and there is a conceptual form of the Lord. That conceptual form is this Virata Rupa, where one conceptualize, if everything has to come from somewhere, right, then let me visualize everything as part of that big gigantic body. And how this is visualized, the details are described in this chapter. This gigantic manifestation of this material world as a whole is the personal body of that absolute truth, wherein the universal past, present, and future of material time is experienced. So literally the whole world that you are living in, like literally imagine, to give you a relatable analogy, imagine there's a tiny bacteria living on your body, somewhere on your skin. And that bacteria knows that if I'm existing, somewhere something is giving me all this energy. It cannot see me, but it can perhaps visualize me. Oh, somewhere there is one Nimai Lila sitting somewhere, and I'm just a tiny part of this. Whatever resources I'm enjoying are part of his body. So that is the vision the yogi conceptualizes, visualizes, right? And that gigantic form of the personality, right? So it says how the universe is covered to these different layers. The yogi visualizes all these layers are just like how we have the sapta dhatus within our body, the 7 layers. Likewise, the yogi also visualizes that how there is water, there is fire, there is air, there is sky, there is ego, there is the physical world, and the entire prakriti in entirety. These are different layers that are covering the body, that are constituents of the body of the Supreme Lord, right? And then one further sees that how they studied that the planets known as the Patala. So if we remember our Vedic cosmology, the entire universe is, the material universe is classified into these 14 different planetary systems. So the lower planetary systems, the Patala, they constitute the feet of the Lord. The heels and toes are the Rasatala. The ankles are the Mahatala. The shanks are the Talatala. So these are the names of the different planetary systems. The knees are the Sutala. The 2 thighs are the Vitala and Atala. The hips are the Mahitala. And the outer space is the depression in his navel. The chest of the original personality of Godhead are all the luminary planetary systems. So when you're looking at the night sky, you're looking at the big broad chest of this cosmic person. And the neck is the Mahar planets. The mouth is the Janaloka. The forehead is the Tapaloka. And the topmost planetary system is a Satyaloka. And this is the head, and there are these thousands of heads one visualizes. His arms, and now the functional part, his arms are the demigods headed by Indra, the 10 directions. Because if you see, if everything is functioning in this world, it has to function by some order. Where is this order coming from? Where is this energy to maintain this order coming from? It is coming from this cosmic person. Therefore, everything that is running the show of this world are part of the Supreme. Maybe the tiny bacteria on my body, it can sense perhaps some blood flowing. Maybe it can even see my heart. Maybe it can see some lymph moving around. Maybe it can see some sweat pores and the sweat coming out. So it understands, oh, there is a water system. Sweat, water, which means there has to be a controller for all this, right? So that Varuna, who's the cosmic water controller, is the sweat nodes within my body. So it understands that, oh, there is some flow of energy, right? There is some wind flowing, air flowing, pneumatic system which is there in my body. Oh, there is some Vayu. in this body. It can even perhaps sense that, oh, I have some lungs, I have some, but it cannot see me in entirety. But it knows conceptually there has to be some person who has these lungs, who has this heart which is pumping the blood, who has these nerves which is transmitting electricity everywhere, right? So this is how in the cosmos the devatas are these controllers: the heart, the lungs, the digestive system. So like that you have Indra, Varuna, like that, and his nostrils are the Ashwini Kumaras, and the mild fragrance is the sense of smell. His mouth is like the blazing fire, because fire consumes everything and converts it into different state. Our mouth consumes things and produces energy. The sphere of the outer space constitute his eye pits. The eyeball is a sun, right? You can see because of your eyes. The universe is able to see because of the sun. If there is no sun, there is no vision. So that power of vision is coming from the sun, who is empowered by the cosmic person. His eyelids are the day and night. When I close my eyes, it is night. When I open my eyes, it is day. The movement of his eyebrows, the Brahma, and similar supreme personalities reside. His palate is the director of water, Varuna, and the juice or essence of everything is his tongue. It is said that the Vedic hymns are the cerebral passage of the Lord, and the jaws of his teeth are Yama, because when you bite, like destruction, death happens, right? They are the jaws of his teeth, who is the punisher of the sins. The art of affection is a set of teeth, because when you're affectionate to someone, you smile and show your teeth. So that affectionate energy is coming out from the teeth. So the affection in this world exists because the cosmic person is smiling and showing his teeth. The most alluring, illusory material energy is the smile. Sometimes just by looking at a smile of a person, you get enamored. So when the cosmic person smiles, the Maya Shakti is coming from his smile. The great gigantic ocean of material creation is but the casting of his glance over us. So this whole material energy, just because for something to exist, you have to perceive it. Your glance perceives. So just like when the Lord glances, the whole material show happens. Modesty is the upper portion of his lip. Hankering is his chin. Religion is the breast of the Lord. Irreligion is his back. Brahmaji, who generates all the living entities, are his genitalia. And Mitra and Varuna are his two testicles. The ocean is his waist. And the hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones. The rivers are the veins of this gigantic body. The trees are the hair of his body. The omnipotent air is his breath. The passing ages are his movement. And his activities are the reaction of the three modes of material nature. O best of the Kurus, O Parikshit, clouds carry the water, which carry the water are the hair on his hair. The terminations of day and night are his dress, and the supreme cause of material creation is his intelligence. His mind is the moon, the reservoir of all changes. The Mahatattva is the consciousness of this personality. And Rudra, Lord Shiva, is his ego. The horse, mule, camel, and elephant are his nails, and the wild animals and all quadrupeds are situated in the belt zone of the Lord along the waist. The varieties of birds are indicated of his masterful artistic sense. Manu, the father of humankind, is the emblem of his standard intelligence, and humanity is his residence. The celestial species of human beings like the Gandharvas, Vidyadhara, Charanas, angels, all of them represent his musical rhythms. And the demoniac soldiers are representation of his wonderful prowess. The Virata Purusha's face are the Brahmanas, his arms are the Kshatriyas, the thighs are the Vaishyas, the Shudras are the under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable Devatas are also overtaken by him, and it is a duty of everyone to perform sacrifice with feasible goods to appease. He is at Adi Yagya, who's causing all work to be done in this world, right? I have thus explained to you the gross material gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in this material world. So if you think about it, what does this kind of a meditation do? No, can you see there is nothing left behind for somebody to think that this is mine. Everything belongs to that supreme cosmic person. So what is there for me to get attached to? That is how the yogi gradually develops detachment. So this is for someone who has still not developed that kind of a, see, so this detachment can come out of loving attachment to the supreme, or it can also come out of a kind of a discipline towards the supreme. So this method, this conceptual method of meditating upon the supreme Lord, it talks about that kind of a disciplined approach, right? But then he also wants to, Sukadeva Goswami also talks about the other path. What about someone who already has developed a personal understanding? What about such a person, right? So for such a person, he in the second chapter, he talks about somebody, how he meditates upon the personal form of Paramatma. So there he very beautifully he highlights that how the yogi systematically meditates on the personal form of the Lord. He says, others conceive the personality of Godhead residing within the body in the region of the heart. So it is described that the Paramatma, the soul and Paramatma, they reside in the region of the heart. And what is the dimension? Measuring only 8 inches. 8 inches is quite huge, right? Of course, you cannot attribute these material dimensions, but the yogi needs something to visualize, right? So one literally visualizes such an overwhelming presence of the Lord within this region of the heart. Almost the size of your heart is 8 inches, right? That's how literally your entire heart is filled with this divine presence. And what is the beautiful form? He has 4 hands carrying a lotus, a wheel of a chariot, a conch shell, and a club, respectively. His mouth expresses his happiness. His eyes are spread like the petals of a lotus, and his garments are yellowish like the saffron of a kadamba flower. So if you've ever seen a kadamba flower, its pollen, it has this very beautiful yellow. It's not a very bright yellow. It's not one of those dull yellows. It's somewhere in between, right? That beautiful yellow is what is the color of Paramatma's garments, and is bedecked with valuable jewels. His ornaments are all made of gold, set with jewels, right? Not silver, not platinum, but gold, and only gold. And he wears glowing headdress. He has a mukut and earrings. His lotus feet are placed over the whorls of the lotus-like hearts of the great mystics. And on his chest is the Kaustuba jewel, engraved with a beautiful calf. So the Paramatma's jewel, there's a beautiful calf engraved on that Kaustuba jewel. That is how you identify Kaustuba. See, so many details a yogi is able to see in that state of samadhi. And there are also other jewels on his shoulder. His complete torso is garlanded with fresh flowers. He is well decorated with an ornamental wreath around his waist and rings studded with valuable jewels on his fingers. His leglets, his bangles, his oiled hair, he has a shiny, oily hair, curling with a bluish tint, and his beautiful smiling face are all very pleasing. Can you imagine the level of detail one can see in that state of samadhi? The Lord's magnanimous pastimes are and the glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indication of his extensive benedictions. One must therefore concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord as long as the mind can be fixed on him in meditation. And then how the meditation also has to be done. The process of meditation should begin from the lotus feet of the Lord and gradually progress to his beautiful smiling face. The meditation should be concentrated upon the lotus feet, then on the calves, then on the thighs, and in this way higher and higher. then the mind become more and more fixed upon the different parts of the limbs, one after another. And that is how one purifies one's intelligence. So if you really want to purify the mind, purify your intelligence, purify of all the samskaras, we need to meditate on the different limbs of the Lord. This is the theistic devotional meditation. The theistic non-devotional meditation, the purification happens where one thinks that, yes, what is there for me to get obsessed with? Everything ultimately belongs to the Supreme Lord. It's all part of his body. So dare I usurp it? The dare I try to confiscate it and think it is my property? That is the detachment of a Virata Rupa meditator. But now, when one develops that kind of a personal devotional understanding, right? There one meditates on the beautiful limbs of the Paramatma. And this is the verse I referred to earlier, the 14th verse of 2nd chapter. Unless the gross materialist develops a sense of loving service unto Supreme Lord, the seer of both the transcendental and material worlds, he should meditate upon the universal form of the Lord. If you have not developed that devotional understanding, if you are still attached to this world, don't prematurely jump to Paramatma meditation. You know why? You'll see Paramatma's jewels and think, hey, I think I should also get that jewelry. Right? When you look at the beautiful garland on Paramatma, oh, I like this flower garland. I also need that flower garland. Right? So, or, of course, this is jokes apart, one may falsely start identifying that I am that Paramatma. I have seen myself. This is a false understanding one may develop. Therefore, one should not prematurely jump to this. As long as there is still some materialistic desires within one's heart, one needs to purify those desires by understanding that how it is the Supreme Lord who is a master and proprietor of everything. So that sambandha, that science of relationship, one has to be firmly rooted in before the devotional meditation begins, the devotional practice, the abhidheya begins. Therefore, if one still has not developed that kind of a very advanced devotional understanding, or one still may harbor some attachment to one's heart, then one needs to very systematically purify one's heart and go through this journey, right? So how such a yogi leaves one's body, that is also very beautifully described. How a devotionally detached yogi leaves the body, and how a person who's still somehow attached to this world and meditating on the Virat Rupa, how does such a person leave this world? Both the paths are very beautifully described after this. He says, "O king, whenever the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, he should not be perplexed about the proper time or place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed and regulate the life airs, and should control the mind and senses. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and merge the living entity into the Supreme Self." So this is the involution that happens. So the yogi has already detached from the external layers. He's still hovering at the level of the mind and intelligence. One absorbs the mind into the intelligence, or in other words, he slowly peels off the connection to the mind. He disengages with the mind energy. Slowly he disconnects or disengages from the intellectual energy. And this is how this yogi slowly starts to go inwards. And as the yogi starts to go inwards, at this state is called as labdhopashanti. Labdha upashanti. So this is the state where one attains a state of bliss. Right? Now, in that state of bliss, what happens? That as one starts to go inwards, because you've already peeled off those material layers, matter is no more troubling you. So one attains a state, a technical term called a labdhopashanti, right? At that stage, what happens? The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know now the devotional goal. Such a person, what do they know? They know that everything is related to Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Supreme Lord he worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment and taking them to his heart. And by the strength of the scientific knowledge, one should be well situated in absolute realization and thus be able to extinguish all material desires. Then gradually how the yogi leaves the body, one starts using the bandhas. So he blocks the Mooladhara bandha, right? And then using the heel, he blocks the anal perineum, the Mooladhara bandha. And then he slowly starts to raise his prana so that the prana doesn't go down. He starts raising his prana, right? So it is described that with the heel of one's foot and by lifting the life air from one place to another in the 6 primary places. So it goes through all the Shat chakras, raises the prana through all these layers. And then the meditative devotee should slowly push up the life air from the navel to the heart, to the chest, and there to the roof of the palate. And then should search out the proper places with intelligence. Thereafter, the Bhakti Yogi should push the life air up between the eyebrows. Now he comes to Agya Chakra. And then blocking the 7 outlets of life air, he should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. So then he bursts open the Brahmarandra. And literally this soft part of our head, which when we are born, it is still not completely formed. It is still very soft. He literally bursts open the champagne bottle. The cork is burst open and poof. And that's how he celebrates his next life, right? And he discards this useless body and goes, back to the spiritual world, right? And then he reaches the cerebral hole and gives up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme, right? But this is for a devotional yogi. But what about our theistic but still not devotional yogi? Because he still has some attachment to this world, right? Because you cannot prematurely become detached. So what about such a yogi? Such a yogi goes through what is known as, now this is like one-shot liberation. Such a yogi goes through step-by-step liberation. So that step-by-step, the Sanskritam word is called krama, right? Kramme, right? In a sequential liberation he goes through. So the word is called krama mukti. So what is this krama mukti? However, if a yogi maintains a desire for material, mind you, when you use the word material enjoyment, it is not that he wants to binge watch Netflix and eat pizza all day. We're not talking about that. It's not that low class enjoyment that we are used to. Somewhere maybe they want to, like somehow, let's say you are going to Vrindavan, but somewhere along the way there are so many stations and you're curious, oh, Surat has come. I heard Surat is a food capital of India. Let me go and explore the food there. Then one goes, maybe say Jaipur comes. Oh, I heard the palaces in Jaipur are so beautiful. I want to know that. So you get down at Jaipur, experience Jaipur fully, and then move on to the next spot. But for somebody who's already so eagerly, one is awaiting that union with the Lord. I can't wait till I go to Vrindavan and meet Krishna. So for such a person, when he's traveling in train from Delhi, from Mumbai to Vrindavan, they will not get down at any station. They are focused. That loving devotion will literally pull them and tie them to that train so that they will only get down in Vrindavan. But for somebody who does not have that and still is very curious about, oh, what happens here, what happens there, they will explore all these higher dimensions and systematically go through certain purification and then move on. So that is what is described here. If a yogi maintains a desire for such material enjoyment, they will transfer systematically to the topmost Brahma Loka, and then or sometimes achieve the eightfold mystic perfection, or sometimes travel in the outer space with this Vaiyasakas. Basically, they are these advanced personalities who travel throughout the universe, right? And then gradually starts molding his mind and senses. Such a transcendentalist, and then there's a whole path he talks about. Such a mystic goes through the Milky Way, through the Shishumna. Shishumna is that it's a pathway in that Milky Way, and then he goes to Brahmaloka, and then first he goes to a planet known as the Vaishvanara, which is a planet of the fire deity. Then he goes through all contamination. And then from there, he goes to the center of that Shishumara constellation. And there he personally meets Lord Vishnu, because that is where in the Shishumara constellation is where the Lord Kshirodaksha Vishnu, the embassy of Kshirodaksha Vishnu, it is there. Then he goes through that. Then from the Shishumara pivot, from there he goes to the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And like that, basically, without going into all these details, but basically he goes through this krama, he goes through systematic journey where at every layer of this, every dimension of this material universe, he gets little purified. And finally, he goes to Satyaloka, the highest planetary system where Brahmaji resides. And there it is said, at the final time, so he lives there doing his meditation, understanding the universe, right? And there, at the time of the cosmic annihilation, when the time for the world is to be destroyed, then there is this fire which Anantasesha, it is the Vedic cosmology describes how the entire universe is sitting on the hoods of Anantasesha. But at the time of annihilation, there is a fire which Anantasesha releases. Basically, the destruction starts happening. Then the yogi sees all these planets of the universe are burning to ashes. Then he leaves for Satyaloka. He goes to the highest planetary system. And there, he from the Satyaloka, he transfers himself into the spiritual dimension, into the state known as Brahman. And what is specialty of the Satyaloka? There, it is said that there is no old age, no death, there is no pain of any kind. Because at that Satyaloka dimension, as you go higher in dimensions, you peel off more of your material layers. Like, for example, in earthly dimension, we have more water and earth. If you go a little higher, if you go to the Devatas, they are more ether and air and fire is their predominant constituents of their body. As you go even higher, they don't have any of the 5 gross elements, they only have subtle elements, mind, intellect, and ego. At the highest loka, Satyaloka, their body is comprised of only soul, ego, intelligence. That's it. That's how purified they are. Can you imagine? No mind to bother them. Pure, refined intellect is what their entire body is composed of. Right? So, because its body is made of pure intellect, are they like, like these left-brained scholars? No. They don't have, though they don't have any suffering, there is one thing that troubles them. A feeling of compassion for those who are unaware of the process of devotional service. And this is the loka of all these enlightened masters. And therefore, they constantly feel for the suffering of these conditioned souls. Then, after reaching that Satyaloka, gradually one goes past all these layers, the coverings of this material world, and eventually enters into the state of Brahman, like that. So that whole involution, how he peels off all these layers and goes past them, that is also described in the next few verses, like that. So then this is only such a purified soul can attain this state of liberation. Ordinary souls cannot. And then, now one may ask a question. Okay, this is the path of knowledge and meditation. But in the audience, there may also be somebody who's interested in doing Vedic yagyas and all the good deeds, the positive karma deeds. What about those who are doing all these Vedic rituals and following the path of karma? What about them? So that also Sukadeva Goswami addresses them. He says, if you see, the goal of all these Vedic rituals is material prosperity. To live a good life. And that itself, Sukadeva Goswami, he smashes them. He says that the way of presentation of Vedic sound is so bewildering. Basically, the Vedic teachings can be sometimes so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of people to meaningless things like material prosperity. And now Sukadeva Goswami, being a true renunciate, he is going to share his mood. Very, very high standard. We cannot emulate that. He says that, one who's intelligent should never endeavor for unwanted things. being competent to pursue practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. And then he says, okay, what are the things that people endeavor for? A good house, some nice clothes, some good food to eat, some nice things to drink. Guess what is Sukdev Goswami's standard? Why do you need cots and beds when there is so much of earth to sleep upon? You have, your cot and bed is what? 6 feet by 3 feet, right? But when you have earth, you can roll as much as you want and you'll never fall off the bed. So what is the use of all your beds? That is Sukdev Goswami's standard. Why pillows when you have your arm to put your head upon? And this is a pillow you can carry anywhere you want, right? Then why do you need utensils to eat when you have 2 palms? All the things in your kitchen, just throw them. All the cutlery and this and that and all the china, all the nice ceramic things that you have in your house, all the gold and silver plates, if any of you have in your house, just throw them. You have 2 hands to eat. Again, Sukdev Goswami standard. And then now, this definitely we cannot emulate. Why do you need clothes when you have all the tree bark? Why all these big factories to manufacture clothes and half of them never get sold? They're all just lying there in the shops all the time. Why are you wasting so much of time manufacturing, so much of time advertising, so much of time selling, and then so much of time buying, and then so much of time washing and folding and drying? And you have tree bark. Simple. If it breaks, take one more. Or if you still want clothes, are there not torn clothes lying around on the street? Just go pick up and wear. And you may say, oh, come on, this is too much here. This is like a lazy philosophy. This is a lazy person's philosophy. Everybody has to work hard to maintain themselves, one may say. But she says, do the trees which exist for maintaining others, did they stop giving charity? Why are you working so hard? Trees stop giving fruits, right? Did they also start imposing tariffs upon consuming of fruits, right? No, trees are freely giving you. Just go eat. If you are thirsty, go to a river. Have all the rivers in this world dried up? What about a home? What about the caves? Caves are there. Just go. Why do you need to build your house and then maintain, pay property tax, pay electricity bill, clean the house? Did the mountains stop? Did all the caves disappear from the mountains? Okay, all this is fine, but I have to endeavor to maintain myself, right? There, Sukdev Goswami now gives the ultimate instruction. You think you are the real protector of yourself? It is the Supreme Lord, the Almighty, is protecting all of you and me and everyone, right? So, you think he has stopped protecting the surrendered souls? Why then will learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by all this hard-earned wealth? So basically, all this karma kanda, all these rituals, he dismisses them. First, the non-theistic meditation he dismissed. Then one may say, oh, within the Vedic fold, there may be theistic, materialistic approach that he dismisses. Okay, then in the path of detachment, also there is, a non-personal, one may still have some non-devotional theistic attachment. What should I do? Okay, then you purify your heart by meditating on the cosmic form. But he says the best method is where one develops kind of a theistic devotional meditation. Now, at this point, one may think, oh, but that theistic devotional meditation, oh my God, I have to see the Paramatma in the heart and meditate upon him. I am not so advanced. Is there a way to, and I don't have love in my heart like such a advanced yogi. Is there a way to cultivate that love? Yes, there is. That method is called as sadhana bhakti. And Sukdev Goswami is going to talk about that. This is also a devotional theistic meditation, but unlike an advanced yogi who has already peeled off all the material attachments and has gone to a very advanced stage, this is something that even you and I can do. And best part is, you will experience the same purification, same advancement, same realization what that Yoga Mishra Bhakti Yogi, the Bhakti Yogi who's using this yogic methods of detachment, whatever they have achieved, you will also experience that. So that method of sadhana bhakti we will see in our next week's discussion. And that's the crux of this whole discussion. The first three chapters, then the next chapter, Prabhupada aptly titles it as pure devotional service. So we will see that particular chapter. But as a homework for you guys to prepare for that next week's discussion, there's a very, very beautiful, long but very beautiful purport in Canto 2, Chapter 2, text number 35. And the translation goes as follows. The personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from our intelligence. This is how the translation goes. 2:235. I want you to very peacefully read this purport at least 10 times and come prepared next week for our discussion. That will help you in understanding the topic. All right, let's end our discussion here. Anybody has any questions or comments? You can raise your hand, or I know it's been a very philosophical discussion today, right? But in short, just remember these three things that he's talking about. The non-theistic meditation ruled out. Theistic meditation, but still with attachments, okay, you have the Virata Rupa, the universal form. Theistic meditation with devotion, yes, there is Paramatma, right? And there is a bonus secret path of sadhana bhakti that he's going to talk about in the next chapter, right? Okay, let's end our discussion here. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.